Our new album came out today, actually. So I think this is our record release party here. It's called Quebec.
Weencast, a Ween podcast with Shane and Rory. Hey, what's up? This is Shane.
And this is Rory.
And this is Weencast. And we welcome you to a new episode. We're going to try to get everything nuts and bolts and the whole kitchen sink about this album into this episode. So no pressure.
The whole kitchen sink, kit and caboodle. The whole, the ball of wax.
And we're going to talk about Quebec. So it's Quebec
Nice.
21 years later? Over 20
dude.
years. So I'd like to say it's Quebec 20 years later, but it's more than that.
Yeah, dude. Well, we've been meaning to get to this. Our initial plan a couple years ago looking ahead was, oh man, 20-year anniversary, but we couldn't quite get it all together. We'll leave it at that. But dude, I've been looking forward to this one for a while.
Yeah, and the reason that we've been sort of like pushing this off and we're kind of doing it now is because we were going back through all of our old shows from that time period up until the album was actually released. So we were waiting for that to kind of coincide with the time frame of our live shows that we were reviewing and stuff.
Which it totally has.
Right.
I mean, at this point, we're slightly past.
Right.
But yeah, dude, so Quebec. Many people regard Quebec to be Ween's best album, or certainly one of their best albums.
Yeah.
So it's a big one. It's a big one. And anyway, so first off, just some of the stats. Well, it was released August 5th, 2003 on Sanctuary Records. And they were actually in the middle of a what I would call is like the Quebec release tour. But basically, they were in the middle of a big summer tour. We had actually seen them in Philly. Was it 2 nights after this?
Something like that, yeah.
We saw them in Philadelphia just after this release. So we were like right around this time period that we had seen it. And they, of course, played a lot of the Quebec songs during that tour in the lead up to the release. The music was recorded at the Zion House of Flesh in New Jersey. And musical credits. So this distinguishes Quebec straight up from
White Pepper.
Yeah, excuse me. What it distinguishes it from White Pepper because White Pepper, as part of the 5-piece live band era, I think that was just the credit on the album, right? It just said White Pepper by Ween.
Right.
Like there wasn't any, all the songs were all written together by everyone. I think it actually, if you think about it that way, and you think about how tight White Pepper is as an album, like it's shorter, it's tighter, it kind of really informs the album in a way. And this is actually more of a throwback to earlier Ween, where Dean and Gene are in practically everything, but then after that, it's just kind of a mishmash of
Right.
of other people.
Right.
So you got the musical credits are Dean and Gene. Andrew Weiss is back in his house. He shows up on 8 tracks, and he also is producing again. And he produced The Mollusk, is that right? And then he didn't produce White Pepper. He had nothing to do with White Pepper. But at any rate, Andrew Weiss is back. Josh Freese plays the drums on 6 tracks. And of course, we covered extensively on our podcast the Josh Freese era, where he covers for Claude. Because notably, Claude is not on this album because this is during his recovery from his automobile accident back in 2002, August 7th, 2002.
Wow.
Because that, literally that's August. They're like gearing up to record. And then he has his accident. And it's crazy to think that all the things that go around Josh Freese coming in, getting to know all the songs, but also he ends up helping them record the album. And then have Claude's recovery and everything and all this, and then the release of Quebec basically take 1 year.
Yeah, man. Mm-hmm.
That's pretty wild with all the shit going on. Anyway, the rest of the musical credits. So Glenn is on the keys for 5 songs. And then, interestingly, Dave only shows up on Chocolate Town.
Wow.
I guess he shows up on more stuff on the Caesar demos. But as far as what's actually on Quebec, Dave's only on Chocolate Town, amazingly enough. And then also Ween pal Sim Kane
Mm-hmm.
plays the drums, I believe, on It's Gonna Be a Long Night, which is notable because Aaron actually isn't on that at all. So that's interesting. But yeah, dude, that's the skinny on that.
And Mickey does not play on the song Captain.
Yes, it's I had to pull up all the musical credits to see exactly who's on that, but
Yeah.
yeah, dude, it's interesting how each of them had one song that they're not a part of.
Yeah. And I guess I never really put all that together, that it was sort of like it's going back to, the two of them and friends. You know what I mean? Because it's true. It's like by the time you got to White Pepper, it was pretty much like the core five. And they just made the album of White Pepper of just being the five of them.
Yeah, it's almost like that's White Pepper is like the culmination of that
Right.
sort of earlier five-piece era band.
So this being 3 years later, and it's back to sort of, being, okay, well, we have to just sort of put it together. So you kind of have to wonder and assume that, since Claude had his accident, they want to get these songs like in the can and get this album like moving and rolling. That's probably why they did that. I mean, you can kind of make that assumption, but anyway, it's just interesting to go over, each song has individual credits. I think each one is completely different, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So pretty nuts.
It's just a total mismatch. It definitely reminds me of going back a few albums.
Right.
The Mollusk is a bit like that too. I mean, the Mollusk definitely isn't just it's the five-piece band playing all the songs.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of interesting. It's just White Pepper ends up being that's part of what makes White Pepper unique.
Mm-hmm.
Although La Cucaracha, does that end up just saying by Ween? I don't remember, but anyway. But yeah, dude. So that is the basic stats. Do you want to read off the song list and then go through that?
Sure, that's cool. Yeah, so we'll do this. The track listing, as it winds up being on Quebec, is It's Gonna Be a Long Night, Zoloft, Transdermal Celebration, Among His Tribe, So Many People in the Neighborhood, Tried and True, Happy Colored Marbles, Hey There Fancy Pants, Captain, Chocolate Town, I Don't Want It, The Fuck Jam, Alkin Road, The Argus, and If You Could Save Yourself, You'd Save Us All.
Yeah, that's great.
Ultimately, there are 5 things that are released for the album. So if you're kind of a record nerd and record and CD collector, these are all released by Sanctuary Records. So if I'm not mistaken, I think this is the first time that everything, including the singles and EPs, are all released on one record label for the band.
Interesting.
Everything else, there was the album and then at least one single or EP that was released by like a European label. Okay. Maybe not some of the original, like, Godween Satan, but all of the Elektra stuff at least. Okay, so you have the actual album of Quebec. One thing that's kind of notable is there is a Japanese version of the CD that is released, which contains a bonus track, which is Uva La.
Ooh.
Okay, we'll kind of get to some of the B-sides a little bit later. There is a couple of CD singles and EPs. There's a Quebec promo sampler on CD that has all songs from the album. Another thing called the Transdermal EP, which is kind of Transdermal Celebration and a few other songs. There's a Transdermal Celebration CD single. And then probably most notable as far as for the collectors is a 7-inch or 45 single of Tried and True and Mountains and Buffalo, which is the B-side to that 7-inch. By the time you're listening to this, there will be a new episode of Shane's Ween Vinyl on our Patreon.
Nice.
It's actually been recorded. I just need to do a little bit of touch-up. So there's a couple of other sort of fun facts that I threw into that episode. So join us on Patreon for that and a lot of other fun stuff that we've done over the last few years. But yeah, so I have a little mini episode on just that 7-inch single.
Nice.
So that's kind of
cool.
the main other thing. Like I said, as far as like something that you would want to go back and collect. Another other little fun fact is, the actual LP, vinyl of Quebec was released on Sanctuary at the time, but then has since been repressed and is pretty readily available. Some of the other ones are still kind of hard to get. I'm pretty sure you could order this on Amazon right now or on just like the regular Ween website. So you can find the vinyl of Quebec. I don't think it would be the original, Sanctuary pressing at this point, but if you wanted a new copy of it, you could get it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool.
That is cool. I was trying to look up what the actual album sales were, but I wasn't able to find that information.
But it does wind up on the charts, though. Am I right?
Yeah, dude. So this ends up being the high of 81 on the Billboard Top 200 charts, the Billboard charts. And at this to date, this is the highest entry for Ween. La Cucaracha ends up coming in at 69, which is pretty impressive, all considered.
Between both of those records, I mean, that's pretty good for like an indie band. You know what I mean? Forgive the term, but
yeah. It sort of tells you the cult status that Ween like attains in that like 2000s era.
Yeah.
Like they really did end up having a lot more visibility and presence, and it's shown on those
right
on those Billboard.
It's like it doesn't really sound that high, but it's like, hey, you cracked the top 100. You know what I mean? So that's pretty good. You have to give them credit. Well, should we go into these songs and just kind of do
dude. Yeah, so we'll talk a little bit about each song, and then after that we'll kind of do, just think about the legacy and just digging a little deeper into the background and also the meaning of the songs and stuff. But yeah, dude, let's talk about some of these tunes, man.
Yeah, man. So basically, It's Gonna Be a Long Night is the pound it home right off the bat Diener shreds track, which is track 1.
Yeah, dude. My take, I have a little bit of a critical take of Quebec in that I think there's a couple songs that I'm not sure if they really need to be on the album. And It's Gonna Be a Long Night, maybe one of those. I don't know, dude. I feel like this is a little bit too it's too close to a parody of themselves a little bit. Like the speed metal, like Motorhead kind of thing. So I don't know. I feel like something like Johnny on the Spot, for example, is way more interesting to me than It's Gonna Be a Long Night. But it's definitely gets the album starting off like in your face and intense, like wakes you up and makes sure that you're ready to go for the rest of the album. So it's kind of an interesting choice to open an album.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, it's almost like, let's just get this shit out of the way. And I don't necessarily mean that in a bad way, because I do like the song and I do enjoy a little bit of the rocking out. But it's kind of like, if you were to put that in this record anywhere else, it would probably really wake your ass up.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else after this is a lot less in your face.
Yes, this album is a lot more mellow and understated.
Right.
Yes, in fact, Aaron's not on this. Aaron, there's one song on Quebec. Aaron's on the credit for every song except this one.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, he doesn't even touch it.
Right.
It's and it feels very Moist Boys, but it's definitely in your face. And you got Roll On to Zoloft.
Yes.
What I really appreciate is that, Zoloft is like a prog rock kind of song, and it's something that it's a bit of like the kind of like what Ween becomes famous for live, more so like the jam side of that. It's sort of like the first time you see it on an album.
That's true. But a couple of things, first of all, Zoloft was played a lot live leading up to the release of the album. As a matter of fact, it was the song that was played the most of all of the Quebec songs. It's the song that was played the most.
Almost every night.
Almost every show since February of 2002 up until the release date of Quebec. But this version is kind of short. It's not even 4 minutes long, whereas almost from the get-go when they started playing it live, it was something that they would jam out a lot. They would add in the helicopter sound effects, which I think is kind of like, supposed to represent someone being like spaced out and like
Yeah.
in like a, dreamy kind of state. But the other thing about this is when you go from it's going to be a long night to something like Zoloft, put you in the time frame and the headspace immediately of these songs are not going to flow together. You know what I mean? Which,
Yeah.
this album of especially of the more recent Ween albums before this is the most like White Pepper in that it's all just individual tracks, right?
Well, I think even White Pepper, there's like a feeling that most of them sort of have.
Right.
Quebec is so different. Like all the songs, there's so many different genres, so many different things going on. Like from one song to the next, can be completely different.
But if anyone was going to listen to this for the first time and think, oh, is it going to be like the Mollusk or the country record? Is there going to be one continuous theme through the whole thing? No, there isn't.
Yeah.
So going from it's going to be a long night to Zoloft, there you go.
Yeah, dude. No, I love, and one thing I do appreciate about Zoloft is it's a little bit of a social critique, I think about like drugs like Zoloft.
Yeah.
Like seeking out, here's my prescription to like feel good about myself in this weird society we live in. I don't know how like intensely, Aaron, I guess, was thinking when he wrote the lyrics, but like, and like came up with the song. But I don't know. I think about that, like, Ween doesn't often kind of wade into like social critique. Like even their other deep songs, even their like, that's not sort of the layer that they typically mess around with.
Yeah, it would still be in a very like artistic way. But I could see that. I understand what you're saying. I agree with that.
But yeah, dude, and then Transdermal Celebration.
Oh man. I said that this is the first banger on this record and it would be I think at least in the top 10 of Ween songs of all time.
I'm not going to put it that high, but it might make my top 20 or so.
I love the fact that basically this song has multiple amazing choruses through it. It has 2-3 like different pieces to it that are all great.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and Diener's guitar is beautiful. The opening run, like that he opens with. Beautiful guitar. This is one of Ween's best like classic rock genre. I think this feels like a classic rock tune, which is interesting because this is the infamously Mickey was in a situation to borrow Santana's guitar to record the solos for this song.
Apparently Mickey was able to use Santana's guitar, get his recording done, and just kind of put it back without anybody without anybody alerting Santana himself and, anybody getting upset about it.
Wasn't it because of Claude's recording studio, or Claude worked at a recording studio at the time that Santana's equipment was at, and Santana was at the Good Morning America show, and his
Something
equipment
like
was going to
that.
be delivered, but it was like sitting there for just a couple hours?
Something like that. Yeah, the story is kind of like infamous, but yeah, this is the this is the solo. This is the song that has the solo from Santana. So thanks, Santana. Thanks, Carlos.
I arrived at 2 a.m. This is from Diener. I arrived at 2 a.m. We very carefully unpacked his equipment and set up his stage gear. And in one take, I recorded the guitar solo for Transdermal Celebration, the one that appears in the album, playing through Carlos Santana's guitar, pedal board, and amplifier.
It
The whole thing
shows.
took 10. The whole thing took 10 minutes, and we were terrified, and we were going to get caught. We got the fuck out of there really fast. That's funny. Guerrilla recording. The whole thing took 10 minutes, dude. Jump in there, like one take, boom. So yeah, so that's pretty infamous Transdermal Celebration
That's
for you.
great, man. Great little mini story.
And then Among His Tribe is a nice little, I kind of like an ambiance piece,
Yes.
really.
Yes.
Like it feels like an ambiance track. Like you'd almost fall asleep to it. This album has like these interludes, there's three interludes that are like more instrumentalist or ambiance type songs. And this is the first one of those three. Kind of splits up all the other kind of more traditional rock tracks, as it were.
A really beautiful song, and yeah, very, very haunting, and puts you in the mindset of like an Indian tribe or.
Yeah, dude. No, so there's like the Ween mythos, Ugnish rising with the scepter, wealth and
Mm-hmm.
power and stuff and whatnot. And Quebec delves really heavily into like the Ween mythos. You have Transdermal Celebration is about this kind of like alien world, destruction of this world. And Among His Tribe, it sort of continues that sense of like I'm looking at the lyrics right now. Light the fire among his tribe. He would go out, sails were made, fish were caught, thought of war. It's kind of like this mythological like thing. It's another interesting thread that runs through the album.
All will teach the young indeed the word of the master's tongue. Chosen son waiting a bride, and fire among his tribe.
The album has all these different like genres being represented, so there's all these different kind of crazy things going on
Mm-hmm.
this album, I think,
Mm-hmm.
and sort of.
And going back to the White Pepper era, a lot of characters and a lot of stories. This is a
Yeah.
real cool like story type of song.
Yes. Yeah, dude, totally. That's a nice way to think about it. A little story. Yeah, dude, the next one is another one that I feel like is kind of like skippable. So many people in the neighborhood. It's interesting. I mentioned how I looked through some old like forum posts and stuff. And there were people that were like, "Oh yeah, I love that song." I'm not, yeah, but there it is.
Well, I mean, okay. So lyrically, obviously, it's not up to par. Okay. I will say at least so many people in the neighborhood has kind of a cool like build in it with the you know? I mean,
Yeah.
and then it has that cool sort of like you know, so it has a cool like thing that like leads up to, you know, like the second half. But, you know, when you're putting it among songs like Among His Tribe
Hmm.
and Tried and True is the song after this, it's like, hey, now so many people in the neighborhood. Are we really going to put this among the ranks of the rest of this record?
Yeah, and you know, it's never been played live. It's like you know, maybe is it playable? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, is it even a setup that's playable live?
Is it even possible?
Can you even do it, sir? Because well, let me take a look here, sir. The things are all about. But if I look at the musical credits, I can tell you that. So it's just Dean and Gene:
Okay.
guitar, bass, drums, vocoder, vocals, keyboards, drum machine, Regina.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anyway, but you know, it's also this eclectic, again, one of these different kinds of currents that runs through the
And
eclectic
also,
nature
yeah,
of the
again,
album.
maybe a little bit of like a throwback to, you know, the old days of the band.
Yeah, you know, before the release, during the press release a few months prior, I think Mickey he's like, "Oh, don't worry, guys, there's going to be lots of, we're going back to the brown," or you know, I forget exactly what he said, but you know, so there's going to be plenty of brown shit, and you know, and this would be one of those tracks that would be like, okay, this is what he's talking about.
Right.
But then it runs into really one of the great kind of beautiful Ween tunes, "Tried and True."
Yeah, man. Another really beautiful song. And one of the things that I don't know if we had mentioned up until now, but we talked about a lot in some of our previous episodes from going to see them live is they were starting to do a lot of acoustic stuff and little
Yeah,
mini acoustic sets. And it's just like the perfect acoustic song. It just is a beautiful acoustic track.
totally. Totes my goats. You know, one of the and really it's the most positive kind of the songs that aren't just like, you know, goofball songs. I don't know if you can call those positive or not. Like, well, first off, so many people in the neighborhood's not necessarily a positive song. It's about, I don't know if there's too many good people. But Tried and True is really about the most positive sort of song, or the message of the song of the whole album.
Yeah, that's true too.
Because it is really like a more, you know, sort of introspective, dark album, you know, in terms of tone and mood.
Yeah, it's really pretty. It really puts you in that headspace as well.
Yeah, dude. And then we rock out the Happy Colored Marbles, which, I'll be honest, I guess I was more enamored of it in the past. Now I look at it a little bit like, I mean, it's a decent tune, but it's interesting to me that it's one of the singles for this album. And am I right?
Well, yeah, it was the song that they played on Carson Daly, which you had
Yeah,
mentioned.
totally. To me,
So
it's interesting. Isn't that an
yeah,
interesting
yeah, yeah,
choice?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know, and it's not one of the initial Quebec songs from the live songs. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It doesn't really make its appearance until early 2003, if I'm not mistaken, as far as it being
Yes.
played live. So it just sort of like comes in out of nowhere. I would say this is kind of one of those tracks that, again, vocally and lyrically, it doesn't really have like the depth, obviously, but it kind of has like that like springboard for Diener and the rest of the band to just start jamming.
Yeah.
Wow, wow.
Happy colored marbles that are rolling in my head. I put them back in the jacket of the one I love. Carry that velvet sack full of pretty colored marbles, and I'll ask you for them back when I'm ready and done.
It's kind of like that's the best part about it is that jam.
Yeah.
You
Totally.
know.
Interestingly enough, on the album, it's just Josh Freese on drums and then Diener guitar and bass and Jeaner vocals, keyboards, and guitar. And so, to me, it's like it's probably a lot better live, which is, I
Right.
think, in general true for Ween. Ween's live to me more of a live band. Their studio stuff's great, but I love Ween live.
Right. I mean, depending on how you slice it, but yeah, this is kind of one of those more like lends itself to being like the live like jam.
And you got Hey There Fancy Pants, which is sort of like just a redo of Mr. Richard Smoker with new lyrics. And if you don't believe me, listen to Hey There Fancy Pants. We can put the audio on and we'll compare them for you.
Richard Smoker, you're a chicken choker. Tonight you're gonna let it all hang out. Daniels and Aquaman, little boys on crystal meth. Tonight we'll tango in the street. You ain't got me. I believe I believe now.
Hey there, fancy pants, play the songs that make us dance. Play a tune that makes the ladies swoon. A song for all the lonely hearts, shattered dreams and broken parts. Feels like sunny days are coming soon. Hey, Mr. Buttercup, spin the wheel and try your luck. Spotlight shining bright tonight on you. Bring along your lady friend.
It's funny because isn't there one of the shows that we had talked about where those songs were like back to back? But yeah, it's like it's very short, so it's not even 2 minutes. Just has a real simple little ditty, just to bring you back to life.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess that's a positive. So I guess that's the one besides Tried and True, although it's a little bit more goofy.
Right.
And just sort of irreverent. I think in my mind, a little bit out of place. I feel like this would fit better on an EP. Like, why wouldn't they take like the best of the Caesar demos and make like an EP?
Right. Right.
And this could be like on there, and then because this album is like 55 minutes or more long. Like, it's pretty good length.
Mm-hmm.
So you could lose a 2-minute song,
Right.
and no one would be the wiser. But anyway, there you go.
So then you get to Captain.
Yeah.
And this is sort of like the start of like the end of the album per se, or like the start of like the second half. This is sort of like their like prog rock roots, like Pink Floyd.
Yes.
Very spacey. Again, lyrically, it's not really there with some of the other, brilliant songs in this record, but, has some cool instrumentation.
Yeah, dude. No, Captain is a song that I think has grown on me over the years, and I really enjoy it live in particular. this is Ween's version of Sloop John B. for the Beach Boys. Like the Beach Boys, it's like, he's telling the captain, I feel so broke up, I want to go home. In
Mm-hmm.
this case, it's like, Captain, turn around and take me home. It's also harkens to, I'm going to throw down some lit fucking references, but Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner by Samuel Coleridge. It's sort of like the spooky, ominous sense. It's almost like they're heading down into a fog bank, into like the deep, dark. It's like, turn
Mm-hmm.
around and take me home,
Yeah, man.
like Captain kind of gives me that sense, that spooky sense. It's nice. And it also kind of serves as an interlude because it's a little bit, it's more like prog rock, right? It's like a just chilled, like
Right.
ambiance. There's this ambiance going on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's cool.
Yeah, man.
And it's like transitions to like a mostly more serious half of the album.
Right. And then we get to Chocolate Town.
Yeah, dude, I love me some Chocolate Town.
Yeah, same here. It might have a little bit of like the humor to it, like the classic Ween humor, but it's not like anything that's so funny or anything like that. I remember when this album came out and some of the reviews were just like, yeah, like get your punk ass back to the dog show, as if that's so hilarious. That's something that like, people have to like point out the funny like lines and it's okay. Maybe you chuckle like the first time you hear it. Like, oh, they got that. Okay, what does that even mean? Ha ha ha. That's it. You're never going to laugh at that line again because that song is actually really beautiful.
Yeah, I know. It's a great example of how Ween, like lyrically, you get these like lines like "Sail brown bay to Chocolate Town," and on the surface you might think like, oh my God, that's like a silly thing, but it's actually a really poignant song. So you have this incongruity between like tone and mood, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Got me on the porch, I'm in the funnel. Says shit's for real, man, like I don't know. Get your punk ass back to the talk show. Making time, breaking ground, sail down Main Chocolate Town.
But yeah, dude, it's another one that really lends itself to the acoustic guitar, a little bit countrified sound to it for sure. You know how I envision this song? It's a little bit like this desire like to dive into the band and the band culture and like Chocolate Town. It's like this is this respite. Like other things are going on. Like the captain is like, turn around and take me home. Chocolate Town is where you wish you could be. It's like this idealized utopia.
Yeah, man.
Sail Brown Bay. A little bit like that'd be cool if it was like an animated feature. A little bit like Puff the Magic Dragon. No dragon, but just like chocolate of Sail Brown Bay. Little Jackie Paper sailing Brown Bay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Really pretty song as well.
Yeah, dude. All right, so the next song is I think one of Ween's best kind of best ballads, and that's I Don't Want It. And if you're talking about like some sort of separation theme to this album, this is the song, right? This
Yeah.
is the song that hits all of that home.
Absolutely.
Did we miss the moon? I've been away for so long, you just threw away the key. It's clearly about falling apart and like people falling apart. I think it's beautiful. I think it's well written.
Yeah.
Kind of slow, sad song.
Repeats itself again and again now. Flowers grow in the springtime and leaves fall from the trees. I've been gone for so long, you just threw away the keys. I understand it. But I don't want it. I know it so well. You tripped me and I laughed when you fell.
It's a great little section of this album Goes from Captain, Chocolate Town to I Don't Want It, you know? It's a little bit of a dreamy, acoustic kind of section of the album,
Right,
which is
right,
pretty
right,
cool.
right. It slows things down again, and there's just a lot of, sort of short but really poignant lines in this song.
Did we miss the moon? I'd lie in your arms if I could. I like the whole imagery of the flowers grow in the springtime, and then he fast forwards. Some people misunderstand that, I think. He fast forwards to a different season. Flowers grow in the springtime. He's describing just things throughout the year. And
Mm-hmm.
leaves fall from the trees. I've been gone for so long. It's like he's been gone for the whole time. He's like, I sort of think about it in terms of being in a band, traveling and stuff. It's not explicit here, it's metaphors, but
You know what line I love? This isn't how it should be. You tripped me and I laughed when you fell now, but after that, this isn't how it should be. I just love that.
yeah, a sense of regret and understanding that it's not what they want, and they sort of I think there's regret there.
Yeah.
Please hold on to the memories.
We've got ourselves so wrapped up that we've forgotten how to learn. Come on. Come on now.
Makes me think go back to Birthday Boy too. Takes me
Yeah.
all the way back to that.
This is probably in the top 5 of, lyrically just and when you look at the lyrics, it's like it seems so short, but I mean, that's just powerful, man.
Yeah,
there's some powerful lines in this song.
This might make my, if I was putting together like a top 20, this might be on there.
Yeah.
This is a fantastic song, dude.
Yeah. This gets up there pretty high.
I think we've already said this, but Quebec has several of the songs are definitely top notch Ween tunes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, the next one I would not characterize that way, and that's the fuck jam.
Oh.
I don't have too much to say about this, except I think it's just superfluous. Like, I don't think it does anything for the album. I don't see any point to it. I feel like at the end of the day, something like Hey There Fancy Pants, that to me is better as like an EP maybe or something, I think in the terms of like the Friends, a couple years later.
Right.
But the fuck jam to me, it's like with all the songs on the Caesar demos that are that are actually pretty darn good
Right.
that didn't make the album. And then I'm kind of like, why is this on here?
The only thing I can really think of is they're trying to put sort of like a divider in there. It's like you got
Yeah.
this chunk, like White Pepper is very good at that. If you haven't listened to our White Pepper episode, go back. It's a few years old at this point, but it still holds up. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just sort of like you got Captain Chocolate Town, I Don't Want It, something that divides it and doesn't really like connect itself to either the songs before it or the songs after it, because it is pretty throwaway. I mean, even So Many People in the Neighborhood, like I said, it has sort of like that cool like build up, like the
Yeah.
so at least you could be like, yeah, get some headbanging in there. Fuck jam. It's basically, it just sounds like somebody playing with like a keyboard, like a synthesizer or something.
Yeah. And for the musical credits, there's no one even gets credits for that.
Right.
It's just out there.
So
It's interesting. You talk about these interludes, and we've talked about how there's like these ambiance interludes among his tribe, and then Captain, and then Alkin Road is coming up.
right.
And they're all paired up with these, what I would call like throwaways, which is among his tribes, then immediately follow with So Many People in the Neighborhood. But then, Hey There Fancy Pants precedes Captain, and then the Fuck Jam precedes Alkin Road. So I would argue that those ambience tracks serve as the interlude themselves, and you don't need those other tracks.
Right.
That's what I would say.
Yeah, I totally agree.
That's where when I go down the road to talk about how this is like Ween's White Album from the Beatles, that's the kind of sense of what I mean. It's like you could probably cut a couple songs out of here.
Yeah.
Like the White Album is honestly, might be my favorite Beatles album, but when I'm like just hanging out listening to it, I skip a couple songs. I won't tell you which ones. I'll let you guess.
Blasphemy.
So yeah, and then that leads into Alkin Road, which gets better every time I listen to it.
Yeah. This is definitely spread out. I mean, this clocks in at 5 minutes and 10 seconds.
Yes, I think it's the longest song on the.
I was just going to say it's probably the longest one out of all of these
There's a few that are
songs.
close, but
Right.
it's the longest song on the album.
It's certainly not afraid to just be glacial, as they say, if you want to get, real Pink Floyd about it.
Yeah, it slows it down. Prog. It's a prog rocker. That's what I wrote down.
Right. So, it's actually got some really beautiful lyrics. You might have to, look these up, and I'm not going to read everything, but, it kind of puts you in like a certain place, not only musically, but also when you listen to these lyrics, it's trying to put you in that place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not going to put it in my top 10 or top 20, but it's a really cool, just very spaced out, very spread out.
It's part of the aspect of this album that is the mythology side of it.
Sure.
I've mentioned that earlier,
Mhm.
that there's side of it that's like the realism,
Yeah.
kind of tracking the separation and the relationship struggles. And then there's this other track that is this like mythology, and Transdermal Celebration, for example, I think is a song in that vein. And I
Mhm.
think Alkin Road is, and Captain is, I think, a bit. And then Alkin Road to me is that too. It's open the gate to the red land. It's like they're traveling to
Mhm.
they're on this road to this land
Right.
where maybe they're trying to, like, if you think about the relationship and the struggle there and that separation, and it's like, this is the road. That's the metaphor. This is the road to somewhere better. Hopefully, that's the hope, maybe. Mountain man, frosted child, eagles cry, puppets of God. Ween's deep.
Yeah, it's also deep, but it, again, you might have to like look up the lyrics. Like as I'm reading these, I'm like, oh, I don't think I ever picked up all of these lyrics just listening to it.
But the other thing I like about it is it feels like a really nice lead in to the Argus.
Yes, dude.
Just because that's like to me like the height of like the Ween mythos. And so Alkin Road just like leads right into the Argus, which
Yes, it's a really cool lead in. Absolutely. You just have the guitar.
yeah, dude, and then it just goes right into that. Do they ever do No, so Alkin Road is never played live, by the way.
Wow.
Never played live. Fuck Jam never played live, and so many people in the neighborhood never played live from this album. Everything else has eventually played at least once. But that would be cool to do Alkin Road into the Argus, do like a 15, 20-minute like long jam out,
Yeah,
That'd be
yeah.
pretty sweet. But the Argus, let's talk about the Argus for a minute. Dude, this is one of Ween's best songs, in my opinion,
Yeah.
in many people's opinions.
Yeah.
It's just like it's got so many things. It checks off all the boxes
Yes.
of what makes like great. It's a truly epic, like classic rock style type tune. Great guitar solos. I mean, Diener's just amazing, and the lyrics are just beautiful. And the way Aaron sings, it's haunting.
Yeah, and it's cool when we're going back and looking at these sort of like the tracks like side by side, because Argus, there again, it's not even quite as long as Alkin Road, but yet it has so many different like parts and pieces to it. It's got solos. It's got just a amazing set of lyrics to it. And it feels like such an epic like jam, but it's really not even all that long. So it's also sort of like condensed. It packs a lot into like a small amount of time.
Structurally, it's really cool, and not sure if you said this about another song or this one, but it does feel very. We talked about Pink Floyd and like Prague. It feels very Pink Floydish in the sense of
Absolutely.
the song has these different parts.
Yes.
You know, just looking at the lyrics, you know, you have like verse, chorus, and then you sort of have like this like interlude and then the ending. You know, it's like there's these different parts, and musically they kind of go through these different parts. And the music mirrors the lyrics really well.
Yeah, I mean it's almost like each like set of lyrics has a different, you know, musical piece to it, and it's
Yeah,
like I said, it just
as it goes through the song.
yeah, it just blends from one to the other. So it's really
A
beautiful.
very melodic. Diener plays a very melodic guitar runs. You know, for me, talk about this mythology. You got Bugnish on one hand, you know, wielding the scepter of wealth and power, and then the Argus on the other, with his many eyes, you know, watching everything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I feel like those are the two like big pillars of Weenology, you know, and the one represents in some ways like their early time and that youth and inexperience and energy, but then also and like, you know, carpe diem, right?
Wow.
And then you know, like the scepter of wealth and power, you know, it's like the Bugnish is rising, take control. And then the Argus is looking and reflecting and seeing all. And he's older and he's more mature. And it's later in their whole evolution. And now it's the Argus. And it sort of represents the whole arc of like the Ween mythos.
Wow, man.
Yeah, dude.
You're laying it out. You're laying it out for us, man.
Dude, I feel it. I feel it in my bones.
That's deep.
Well, it's a beautiful song. The lyrics, and not to read all the lyrics, we could just sit here and read them all. But, you know, you get that sense of this creature is just sort of compassionate and love and just watching over everything, but powerless to stop these terrible things from happening. And the Argosy cries, though love has its place in the sun, it's only man's fears that carries him on. That's like his conclusion, you know? And that's kind of an interesting way for it to end, because then the last song on the album
Yep.
goes back into the like reality track, and it's if you could save yourself, you'd save us all.
Yeah, man. I mean,
Which
it's almost very like autobiographical. It's just so like blatant, you know, almost like he's just, you know, this is what's been going on with me, kind of.
what's going on?
I don't mean I don't mean in like a fun way like that either.
Not like in a fun way.
Yeah.
No, and well, so I actually have a question, and I don't want to sound ignorant, but when he's singing in the song, "If You Could Save Yourself," is that an internal monologue? Like like he's imagining, like that's what he's saying about the other person, or is he sort of internal monologuing the other person saying that about him? Like, is that what you called me for?
Yeah, see, I mean, I definitely think the lines where I thought you needed my help to make it good again, the times I've spent working myself to death, I thought that's what you wanted. I think he's really just talking about himself there. So, you know, maybe you're right. I mean, maybe it's just all his own like internal monologue, like, oh, this is all on me. This is what I'm feeling is all put on my shoulders.
It's a poignant song. It's a strong song. It's the reason why there was the suggestive lyrics sticker on the album because there's no foul language in this entire album except the infamous "come in your mouth" line.
Yeah,
Came in your mouth
and
line.
there's only a handful of songs on this record that even have any sort of like quote unquote humor about them. I mean, you could say maybe Happy Colored Marbles, Hey There Fancy Pants. What's the line in Tried or True about get your punk ass back to the dog show? But
Yeah.
this was definitely like, you can go back and listen to.
It's gonna be a long night.
Well, I mean that's more of just like a jam, a rockin' jam. You know what I mean? I don't really think that has the, the humor about it, so to speak. I mean, if you like,
I feel like there's a lot of ridiculous lines that are sort of meant to be like ridiculous.
right, if you like read the lines, but I mean, I remember listening to this live, especially the first few times that it was played. And, it's a quiet song, so people are quiet, they want to be respectful. But then when he sings that line, it's just like,
That was a great impression.
yeah, it's like, of course,
That was fantastic, dude.
that's the crowd at the time that line gets broken out, and it's just like, oh, shut the fuck up,
Grow up.
like, yeah, grow up, people.
You're just so mature for a Ween fan, you know?
But you know what I mean. Of course, it's like, well, you got to have some comic relief, right? It's like, Ween.
Well, they do. I think sometimes to get serious for a second, I think maybe Aaron felt like he had to provide some kind of comic relief for everyone at the expense of his own soul.
Yeah, like a little bit of an icebreaker, because it's obviously a very serious, song. And, he basically, the last verse is just, either on the album or live, it's just, he just wants to scream it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just yell it out, get it out.
Totally. Well, dude, I feel like it's cool. It's ironic that I mentioned how, oh, this one song would be good on an EP or this would be this. And here we are. Uvala is on the Japanese version bonus track. We get a bonus track only in Japan. Of course, nowadays you just go on YouTube or spot wherever you go for music and everything's there.
Yeah. So Uvala is a really cool jam, which, this has been played 19 times. Which
That's
is
it?
Yeah, that's a little bit surprising
Wow,
to
man.
me, because I would have
Wow,
thought it
man.
was more than that. Maybe just from going to see them so much around that time period. Because if you kind of go over the list real quick, there's a bunch of times in 2002, some in 2004. It looks like, and then once they come back, 2016, 2017.
Lump dried up, I pulverized to the young drink like a lick off the Asian barrel. What kind of trick do you have up your sleeve? I'll plug it up, put it back away, rest away.
But it's a really cool quote unquote B-side, and at least there is like a finished version of it, which is more than you can say for some of these songs.
You were fortunate to actually go to the Conduit on February 7th back in 2002, and that was where a whole bunch of Quebec songs were debuted,
Yeah, man.
which is pretty cool. It's going to be a long night, Zoloft, Transdermal Celebration, Hey There Fancy Pants, Chocolate Town, and Save Yourself. So that's really cool, dude.
Yeah.
And then, the big ones that just looking at like what was played back then. So we actually went to a good amount of shows back then. So we got to see like Zoloft a whole bunch of times because that's already played like 32 times by the time the album comes out.
Yeah, that's nuts. It was almost like every night. It was almost like every show. It might actually be every show. We didn't go back and look at every one of them, but that's a lot for to be played that many times before the actual record. So that's only over the course of 2002 into the first half of 2003.
Totally. Some other like things just to mention, I think, from the live performance shit. Not to, because I don't want to just read everything off the list, but the Argus, interestingly, isn't played at all during the entire like summer Quebec tour. But then for the fall tour, well, I guess it's technically still the end of summer, but it's basically the fall tour in the lead up to live in Chicago, they start playing the Argus. It's almost like they realize they want to do they're going to do the live in Chicago and they want the Argus to be on it, which I think is, of course. Of course, you'd
Wow.
want the Argus to be on it, right?
Wow,
So that's kind of an interesting thing to think because they don't do it at all. I was looking at that and thinking, like, man, we didn't hear that at all in all those 2002, 2003, all those shows. Doesn't show up at all until
wow.
right before Live in Chicago. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty nuts, man. That's pretty nuts. Among His Tribe. So, and that wasn't brought out until they came back.
No, dude, that's a reunion era only.
I said that's pretty nuts to me, and
Yeah,
I'm
that's cool.
surprised
It's wild.
that they didn't throw that in there right from the get go. As far as that's in the beginning of 2002 on is when they started doing like the at least mini like acoustic set.
Yeah.
Now for
Sort of mixed. Yep.
that first show where a lot of the Quebec stuff is played for the first time, there's like a full acoustic set.
Yes.
But for a lot of those shows leading up to, the breakup, there would at least be 5, 6 like acoustic songs within the main set.
Well, yeah, maybe 3 to 3, 4, or 5.
Yeah, so like Among His Tribe, I think would be perfect. Same thing with Tried and True, because that's one where they would pretty much do that almost every time they did the acoustic
Yeah.
set, the acoustic songs.
Yeah, dude. So Tried and True, 50 out of 99 total times played, 57 times are acoustic.
Wow.
And that's debuted in 03 during that summer. Martha's Vineyard. Oh, it's debuted August 8th. So just a couple days after the album comes out.
Oh, nice.
They do it acoustic.
Yeah, so I just feel like Among His Tribe is another one. So it was played once as far as, acoustic songs, but I don't know why they wouldn't just throw that one in there and kind of like rotate them. You know what I mean? And Chocolate Town is the other one. So there's
Chocolate Town's the other one, and Tried and True are the two that got a good amount of acoustic play.
Right.
Because they were played a little bit more. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, it just seems like, that's it's a missed opportunity, in my opinion.
Yeah, dude.
That, Among His Tribe, because that is a really pretty song.
Totally. I would say the same thing for Alkin Road. And I'm actually surprised, apparently, unless I'm missing something, the Argus has never been done acoustic.
Well, there's probably just too much going on. But, I mean, they could do it. They could could find a way.
Oh, well, for sure.
Yeah, it would be sweet. I'm sure they could make it really nice.
Yeah. But that's not who they are. They gotta, shred it. It's gonna be a long night, dude. We're not just guys hanging out at a campfire playing our acoustic guitars.
But then, as you had mentioned before, so there are 3 songs that were never played. So Many People, The Fuck Jam, and Alkin Road have never been played live.
Which,
makes sense.
I think it makes sense when you think about, like, how those songs are constructed.
Right.
They're sort of a little bit sans, just like regular band instrument setup.
Yeah. As cool as Alkin Road is, I would say it would probably lose the crowd if it was.
Dude, you could have all kinds of atmospherics and get the smoke pumping, do a little akin to like Can't Put My Finger on It intro. Like,
I mean, I feel like the hardcores would love it, but as far as like any like regular people that would be there that night, you'd probably get some yawns.
What anniversary do we need Quebec to be at in order to get the show a live performance of the album?
Oh man, hey, 25 years coming up. 25 years. Perfect opportunity.
But yeah, dude, and then I guess one last thing about the live performances, of course, and anyone who goes to Ween shows will get this, but the songs that kind of have been common in the rotation, Zoloft, Transdermal Celebration, and Happy Colored Marbles.
Right.
And each of those are right around 200
Mm-hmm.
total times played. And and then you think, okay, well, also they only came out in like '02. 200 for those is pretty big. For the songs that have been played, If You Could Save Yourself is one of the rarest, 23 times. And I believe we were talking about that another episode, that virtually all of those were from like that time period.
Right.
And they really I think they've played like once or twice since then. Like they've given up playing If You Could Save Yourself. That was really played a lot during that era,
Mm-hmm.
during the actual Quebec era. So that's kind of cool.
I think they broke it out a few times, after they came back. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
That was very heavy in that time period. And then it kind of like was lost for a while.
Lost to the sands of time.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, dude, that's kind of a, broad sort of look at the songs. Do you want to talk about the Caesar demos?
Yeah, man. So in 2011 is when Caesar demos were actually released. So I think it was really just something that Mickey had put out for the fans on the Facebook page, or just a link to it, like, here, download these. And
Did that coincide with the breakup?
I think so.
Damn,
I think so, yeah.
2011. Was it sort of like he put it out like after, like sort of like all this shit's going on, like here's something to check out? Or was it sort of just coincidence?
I don't know. I think it was probably just coincidence.
Yeah.
Digging through this stuff, but it's kind of obvious that it's like everything that was floating around at the time of Quebec and all of the songs that they're working on for Quebec. So I'll just read down, and this is technically 2 quote unquote discs. At the time it was like, hey, burn it to CD or whatever. It was put on 2 CDs because that's how, we kept things back then. So,
Well, I can read it off, dude. I got it.
Yeah, please do.
Chocolate Town, Potluck, Uva La, So Many People in the Neighborhood, Linda, the Sexy Dancer, That Man from the Flatland, Happy Colored Marbles, Hey There Fancy Pants, If You Could Save Yourself, You'd Save Us All. It's Gonna Be a Long Night. Oh, My Little Country Cottage, Among His Tribe, It's Transdermal Celebration, Captain, Tried and True, and I Fell in Love Today. And then next disc is I Don't Want It, Ambrosia Parsley, Zoloft, Love Come Down, Alkin Road, Don't Let the Moon Catch You Crying, You Can Go Shit in Your Hat, Not, Someday, She Caught My Fancy, and Eulogy for David Anderson. Things You Already Know, Hello Johnny, and I'm Wide Open.
The main thing that I would say about this, and I know a lot of people love it because there's a lot of people that talk about Caesar demos, and I never really gave it a whole lot of time because I think in my brain, whenever you talked about demo songs or, rough cuts or whatever you want to call them, it was always about like the quality. But at this time, this is 2002, 2003, and the technology is there to make like a nice like demo. To make like a nice, like, scratch track or whatever you want to call it. And the quality of these is actually really good. Okay.
Yeah, for the most part. I think some of them, I think the quality varies.
Right. But as a matter of fact, I think for so many people in the neighborhood, it's that exact same demo piece, only with the solo part like put into it. I think otherwise it's that exact same thing.
Yeah.
It sounds absolutely like identical to the actual like album version.
Hey man, that's such a great song. It didn't need any improvement. They just slap it together and put it on the album.
But, going back and listening to these over the years, we've been researching this and listening to them now, but I've given them more of a solid listen over the last few years. There's a lot of really cool stuff. Obviously you have all the Quebec songs that everyone knows and loves, but Uva La, like I had mentioned, okay.
Yeah, there's definitely a couple that make it into the live rotation.
Right. You got Someday,
Yes.
That's been a great like live track. And then you have a couple of other songs like I Fell in Love Today, which winds up being on Shinola.
Yes.
Okay. So some of the other songs from this have kind of like, seen the light at least a little bit. But, the main thing, like we were mentioning with some of like the quote unquote like throwaway tracks, sorry, from Quebec, it's like, well, what about some of these other songs? Like I think probably the one that stands out the most for me is That Man from the Flatland. I think you could really make some. I'm being serious. You know what I mean? It's a funny title, but like I think that's a fucking sick jam. You know what I mean? Like that is a really
dude.
cool...
No, it's a great tune.
Dust, but the cows is screaming pain. So he came like a chill of shame. Smiled when the love tore my world down. Maybe the dust or her eternal lust. I'll never know about your flatland song. That man on the flatland took my woman. That man on the flatland took my woman. Oh! That man on the flatland took my woman.
And there's a couple of other ones that are a little bit on the silly side, like Linda the Sexy Dancer, but like that's
Yeah, a little irreverent.
yeah, like that's a cool song too. So there's other things that it's like they certainly could have made something out of and maybe would have been a better choice than, Fuck Jam or So Many People in the Neighborhood. But that's just how history played it out,
I view those the entry of Fuck Jam and whatnot to be Diener just being like, oh, we got to put some of this brown shit in here.
Yeah.
Like to me, it just really seems like a very like intentional, like we're Ween, so we have to have this on the album. If I could add a couple my 2 cents about
Please.
Caesar demos. First off, organizationally, I would probably should just take the time to split it up where like one half is all the songs actually made Quebec and the other half is separate.
Yeah.
Because there's enough songs here to practically to have its own album in its own right.
Right.
And again, like you already mentioned many of them, so I'm not going to repeat that. There's so many that are worthy of an EP or an album level treatment. Where
Certainly.
it's really done well.
Yeah.
It's kind of a shame that they're not. Some of these songs I think are close to it. And they're a little bit irreverent. I think that's kind of the issue. Is like a little bit of this is almost like Dean goofing off or Gene are goofing off a little bit on an otherwise very serious
Yeah.
like recording spree,
Yeah.
like time period. Like, because a lot of these are, because you talked about how Quebec is there's not a lot of humor in Quebec, and there's a significantly lot more humor, I think, in the Little Caesars, in the Caesar demos.
Yeah. It's true. It's very true.
Yeah, and eulogy for David Anderson. He's the gentleman who was found in the canal, correct?
Yeah. Right.
Damn.
Yeah, that's nuts, man.
Yeah, it all comes full circle. So that's kind of a sad scene. The
Well-
guy ended up being found in the canal,
Right.
muerto.
And we'll kind of start getting like our overall takes on the album. But one more thing as far as like individual songs, and again, plug for our Patreon, check out the Shane's Ween vinyl. But Mountains in Buffalo does not does not show up on Caesar demos. So it's really the only thing that I can think of that doesn't like wind up on here or Quebec. But it's definitely like a finished version. It's not like a demo recording. You know what I mean? It's definitely like a finished song. But, kind of starting our overall, thoughts on the Quebec album, you talked about it right there in and of itself, is it definitely has a lot of darkness. And I feel like some of those tracks were just sort of thrown in there to like brighten it up a little bit. So it's just not so like heavy.
Yeah.
And just like we had mentioned, a little comic relief, because it is a very heavy album.
So, the interesting thing to me is it feels a lot like you have to go back to something like The Pod to find the variety of Quebec. Would that be understating that?
Mm-hmm.
And so on the pod, though, this is the difference, is that really is just like, what, 80 minutes of just really disparate, like different stuff that doesn't have any coherent kind of meaning. Whereas Quebec totally does have meaning, I think, and themes that are being presented and a story that is telling. You know, I think there is ultimately a lot of cohesion thematically in Quebec.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you talk about these darker themes, it's Ween's most introspective album. It's like, to me, Quebec probably packs more meaning than like